I'm working on another antique car restoration project for my buddy Bob. You may have seen my videos I did a few months ago on the brass hubcaps I made, but this is for a different car. This is a photo I found on the internet of a car similar to the one we're working on. This is not Bob's car, but this is one that's already been restored by someone else. The car that Bob and I are working on is in very raw condition, which is to say it looks pretty much as it came out of the barn from wherever Bob found it. In this case, I'm working on some drivetrain repairs. In fact, I'm making 2 new axles and some other components that need to be replaced. There's not a lot of detailed documentation available for these old cars, but you can in some cases find overview type of technical drawings such as this one. And this is the differential, and then the axle, the bearings. One thing that makes this type of work a little different than some other projects is the fact that the original factory specifications aren't always available. And even when they are, they may not be particularly relevant because the components may be so worn that they don't fit like they were originally intended to. Or in the case of this car, it looks like both of the axles were shop made by probably 2 different individuals at 2 different points in time. Well, this is one of the axles that came out of the car, and I won't call it the original axle because this almost certainly was made somewhere, between 50 and 100 years ago by somebody who worked on the car. This is the wheel, and the parts that I'm working on, of course, are this axle and some of the associated parts out here where the wheel connects to the axle. This car is over 100 years old, so there's been a lot of repairs to it done naturally over that time. And if you imagine, these relatively stiff wheels bouncing over, old unfinished country roads, dirt roads and whatever, they take a lot of wear and tear compared to highway travel today. Well, I don't know. It's almost that bad again now, right? You can see there's a lot of bad scoring on here. This thing is pretty well beaten up, which makes it difficult to get everything to fit. There's a lot of mechanical play in the system, which if you don't do something about it, will cause the car to shake itself to death. The point is that what you see and what you get are often quite different from the factory specs, either because of wear or because of modifications or replacements that have been done by other mechanics over the years. And I should mention that all of this car repair work is brand new to me. Like most guys in my generation, back in the 60s when I was in high school, me and my buddies used to tear apart old cars and work on them. So I had that experience, but that was a long time ago. I won't say we were very sophisticated about it back then. I didn't have any machining skills back then. But, it's like any other machining job in a lot of respects, and I'm doing a lot of reading and learning about the specifics of antique car components. So I'm learning as I go in this case. So if you see anything that looks crazy to you and you know about this kind of stuff, you can comment and maybe I'll learn some things. Well, this is a part I made that actually goes on the end of the axle and interfaces with the wheel. And the screw thread there is actually to screw the hubcap on. But the original ones were sort of cast in place into the wheel hub or something similar to that. But they were pretty much in really bad shape. So Bob decided to just cut them off and sand them down and remove them and make new ones. So that's what this is. I made this a while back. And there's another similar one for the other side. But because the dimensions are different on each side, each one of these had to be custom fitted to the specifics of the axle and the wheel that it goes with. The wheel is held on by a combination of this tapered key, which goes on something like that. And then there's also a retaining pin that goes through this hole here and goes into the wheel hub on both sides. So the wheel is actually locked onto the axle by a combination of this tapered key and this cross pin that goes through the wheel. This key actually is in reasonably good shape, at least compared to many of the other components. So I think we're going to reuse that one. The key for the other side was in much worse condition, so I made this one from some key stock material and made it pretty much to match the dimensions of the one that we have that's reasonably good. The keys of this general shape are still made and commonly used in lots of kinds of machinery, so Bob got these from McMaster Car to use as a starting point, and so I took one of these and machined it down to this, and so we've got some more of this material if I need to make another one. So originally Bob asked me to make these end caps and then the key, and as things progressed and Bob decided to pull the differential out and take a look at the other end of the axle as he was dealing with some of the issues of wobble and play in the drivetrain. And what he found was that there are so many issues with the axles that it looked like it was probably best to make new ones. So that's what I'm working on now. Down here on the other end of the axle, this pinion gear attaches, and there are some Woodruff keys that go down in these slots here, and then they engage with this keyway in the pinion. Now Bob looked online to find some Woodruff keys of this general size and shape that we could use, but we couldn't find anything very close. And with Woodruff keys, they're typically purchased in standard sizes, but we couldn't even find a size that was close enough to fit. Taking a closer look at the ones that are in there, it became apparent that these probably were machined, from bar stock at some point. And in fact, if you look at this one, you can see that it's been center drilled on a lathe. So probably some repair guy, who knows, 50, 60 years ago, 80 years ago maybe, took a piece of bar stock, put it on a lathe, faced it using a combination drill and countersink, it looks like, and then cut it in half with a saw and file it down or whatever until it fit. So that's the kind of thing you run into. Well, because we couldn't find any Woodruff keys that would fit these slots, and because of other complications of trying to work with Woodruff keys, we decided to do away with them on the new axle and just use a straight key here. So more on that later. And as you can see, there's another hole here for a cross pin, but the cross pin on this end is a different size than the one on the other end. But here's the kind of issues you run into. The key on the axle has to fit snugly into this keyway on the pinion, and because of wear, the dimensions of this keyway are not not very close to factory spec, and of course we don't even know what the factory spec dimensions are or were, so we kind of have to go with what we got. So the dimensions of the keyway on this pinion gear are going to determine the size of the key we have to make, and then that will determine the size of the slot we have to cut in the axle. Now I have both pinion gears here, and the one for the other axle is a lot more beaten up, and in fact you may be able to see that the hole for the cross pin is oblong, in cross section, so we've got to deal with that as well. We'll have to either bore that out or make some kind of a pin that will fit snugly in there. We haven't decided what to do with that, but this one is for the other axle. I'm not going to work on that until I finish the first one. So what I'll be working on is basically doing whatever machining I need to do to each end of the axle and the middle to come up with a new axle. The originals are 1 1/16 inch outer diameter, and normally that would be constant all the way down the length, but because we have to fit to these pinion gears, we may need them to be a little bit larger diameter on the ends. So Bob ordered some oversized stock, which is 1 1/8 inches, I believe, and it's chrome moly steel, and I'm getting ready to cut that on the bandsaw. I've got this bar stock still inside the cardboard shipping tube, and I've found in other projects that these end caps are kind of a pain in the butt to get off of here, so I'm just going to saw it off on the bandsaw. So this is my Harbor Freight horizontal vertical bandsaw. You may have seen it in some of my other videos, but I've got it on a nice cabinet, and it's on wheels so I can roll it around, which is important for projects like this where in the limited space I have in my shop I need to be able to run this long bar stock down the aisle here in order to be able to fit it into the saw. So down near the other end there I have a wooden shop stool, and then on top of that I have an adjustable height platform, so I can set that so that the bar is level. Well, there's our bar stock down inside of there. Well, this bar stock for the axle is 4140 chrome moly, and I've never worked with that before, so I'm going to cut off a 6-inch piece just so I can do some test machining on my lathe and maybe with the mill, cut a test keyway before I get set up with the real axle and then find some problem I wasn't anticipating. Put a little cutting oil on there. Got the stock over here on the PM1228 lathe, and we're in the 3-jaw chuck, so I'm just going to do a facing cut with a high-speed steel tool bit and see how the cut goes. Now, one issue that I may run into is that almost all of my lathe tooling is high-speed steel. I do have the typical low-cost carbide tip boring bars, and I have some of these sort of generic carbide insert tools, but I don't know how they'll work, so I may have to get some better quality insert tooling as I get into the job, but we'll see how it goes. There's actually not a lot of machining to be done on the two ends, but I'm going to need to turn down the middle section to get it to the right OD. Well, that cut pretty well. I used a fairly slow feed rate, but now that I've got it faced, I think I'll take another light cut with a higher feed rate and see how that goes. You may have seen my lathe cam in some of my other videos, but it's set up in this case so I can look down the bore of the lathe, and I can look up here on this screen and get a nice large view of the cutting that's going on, which is real helpful in a situation like this where you want to get a good look at the cutting action. I didn't use any kind of cutting fluid. I sometimes use this black or dark sulfur oil. It's actually for pipe cutting, but it seems to work pretty good on steel. So I'll try that. I use a little faster feed rate. Alright, well, it's cutting real nicely, so that gives me confidence that the high-speed steel tooling may be all I need, at least for most of the work. Now I'll put a slight chamfer on here just to avoid cutting myself. Well, that little cutting test went better than I expected, so that's real encouraging because I think I can do most or all of the work using high-speed steel tooling, which is what I'm really set up for. Before I can start work on the mini axle prototype, I need to measure some dimensions on this axle. I won't call it an original axle, but it's the axle that was in place when Bob got the car. So this one seems better than the other one, so I'm using this for a reference. I need to measure the distance from the center of the cross pin hole to the end of the shaft. So I've got it set up here on the SX4 mill, and I've got it leveled, and I'm using a wiggler to take the measurements and then read the dimensions off of the DRO. It's difficult to use a caliper or a micrometer or other tool to measure the distance from the center of a hole because you don't have anything to grab onto. Now you can take a pin or a plug of known diameter that's a snug fit and of course measure from the side of the pin to to the side of here and then subtract half the diameter of the pin. But in this case the hole isn't completely concentric, it's worn, and I don't have a pin or a plug that is a snug fit for that hole. So I'm using this other method here. I'm using the wiggler to find the center of the hole, and then to measure the edge, and then the DRO tells me the distance between those two after I subtract half of the diameter of the wiggler tip. Now I need to flip the bar around and do a similar measurement on the cross hole on the other end. Down here on the far end of the bar, I'm using this little adjustable platform. They're known as lab jacks, L-A-B jack, because they're frequently used in chemical type laboratories or biochem laboratories for setting up distillation apparatus or anything where you have a lot of glassware that has to be matched up and adjusted in height. So I started out my career working in a biochem lab, and was very familiar with these, and I later found they're great for jobs like this in the shop, so I can level out the bar and support the weight of this long extended piece out here at the end. And I have a much bigger one. I use it in the same way, but for bigger jobs. On this end of the shaft we have these two slots for woodruff keys. Those are used to hold the pinion gear in place. I want to get this aligned so that the hole is vertical, so I'm using a transfer punch, and this is the largest one that will fit in the hole, and I just align that visually until it's more or less vertical, so that should be accurate enough for this measurement. Now I'll use the wiggler to find the center of this hole. Now I can move to the center here, although I don't really need to, and that now reads 0 on the DRO on the x-axis. Now I'll raise the wiggler up. I'm using the z-axis DRO, so I use the same depth for the wiggler both here and here, so if I have to repeat the measurement I can get it consistent. Now we'll use the wiggler again on the end of the shaft. Okay. And now I can take my reading from the DRO. I'm over here at the PM1228 lathe, and I've got this 6-inch length of 4010 bar stock that I cut off of the long piece, the 6-foot long bar for the axles. I'm going to use this as a little prototype that I can do some of the machining operations on for two reasons. One, I want to see how it cuts on this lathe using high-speed steel tooling, which is what I probably will use, and secondly it will give me a little model to work from that Bob and I can use to discuss and test fit into other machining the real axle.